Let me tell you a little bit about Scottie. Scottie Jeanette, formerly Scott James, didn't make it easy on herself. Like many late-stage trans women, Scottie had made one hell of a guy. Everything in her life screamed alpha male. With over 30 years in television production, no one would guess that Scottie, a top survival showrunner who had led an über-male productions into the world's most dangerous places, was engaged in a lifelong battle for her soul. But she left behind the male privilege to embrace truth, grace, and womanhood. With the support of her true love of 26 years, her wife Marcy, Scottie was able to shake off 50 years of expectations from her family, society, and herself. And then a little bit about Marcy, a speaker, director, producer, and owner of her own production companies in San Francisco and San Diego. She lends her sharp, crisp, and witty writing to all forms of media, from corporate branding to human rights campaigns to animal activism. Apparently you can ask her anything about possums. Not really sure what that's about. Marcy's narrative is insightful, engaging, and unforgettable. They did kick off their speaking engagement, by the way, at speaking at one of the other top companies here in the Silicon Valley, Google. And I have a quote from their VP, Brad Horowitz. This was on their website. With recent emphasis on creating a more inclusive workplace, we are constantly looking for ways to spark positive conversations that will value shifts and create new policy. I thought that was pretty relevant to today and why we have Marcy and Scottie here speaking today. So they're here today to share their transgender experience with us, to discuss how to embrace change in the workplace, and to offer ideas on how to support people inside and outside of the LGBTQIA, yes, there is another letter added to the list, community. So without further ado, Scottie and Marcy, welcome.
I feel like this is like the Golden Globes.
Yeah.
How come we didn't get a table at the front?
Let's hope it will. Let's hope it will be. By the way, Judy, don't freak out, but I've actually added another initial to the
soup, to the rainbow team.
True. Well, I want to thank you, Judy, and welcome all of you. It's so great to have you here today and be able to share our life's path with you and some of our experience, and hopefully you'll find it at least humorous at times and hopefully helpful. So welcome all of you. We will have Q&A at the end, so we want to be sure that you get to ask whatever you need to ask. So you've heard a little bit from Judy with the introduction, but for most of Scottie's life, she imagined and dreamed about living her life as the woman she knew that she was. She wasn't interested in being a celebrity or spokeswoman. She just wanted to live a normal life. And so for decades, wasn't even sure that could ever happen, that it might have to be another lifetime. So at one point, that became no longer a choice. Scottie's inner woman just wouldn't let herself be tamped down. So she couldn't hold it back and ended up writing a book called Getting Back to Me, From Girl to Boy to Woman in Just 50 Years. The book has become really an inspiration, and it's turned out a manual for a lot of people. And it really is her full story of the transition.
But the book is not about my coming out, it's about our coming out. And that's really because, as you'll start to get to know Marcy a little bit better, she is no bystander. Mm-hmm. But we had had a really super happy, wonderful marriage that was based on all the things that we think are why we got married, right?
But dogs, cats,
jalapenos.
We know there's an animal lover over here somewhere. You can ask the possum question later. Gotcha.
But really, as we started, I wasn't doing this as an immature teenager, although I act like one now, unabashedly. But I was doing it as a mature woman. And so I was able to see that my transition would also be her journey, that she had a journey that she had to make, that we had a journey that we had to make together. So my coming out was our coming out.
And actually now we like to say that Scottie, it's not so much transitioning but blossoming. But as one dear friend of ours told us recently, look, it's the other people around you that really have to go through the big transition here. So it's true, it is a big transition, and it's a big thing for people to get used to. And we discovered as we traveled this road together, people were interested in our story. They wanted to know how we did it. How did our marriage survive even in this transition? So far from being able to lead a quiet life, and Scottie is very much now in the public eye and a spokesperson, and we both are, and we're happy to be.
So, as Judy says, flash forward to today, here we are at NVIDIA, and as she just said, we're going to be talking a little bit about transgender in the workplace, and also what we say in the community is Transgender 101, which is kind of a way of describing what snow is without asking the snowflakes. Okay, so even though everybody tries, it's not one size fits all, but there are some general things that basically what we use that in the community to do is say, here's a simple way for us to, through helping you to understand where we're coming from, how we hope that you will regard us and respect us. So, to do that, we're going to do that by sharing a few experiences that we've had along the way and some discoveries that we got from our personal relationship, and we hope that that's going to help you and inspire you.
One of the places I had to start, and we both had to start, was to take a look at what concepts and belief systems we were bringing into this whole idea of transition. And it really affected a lot of the circumstances of our life. We started to look at our perspective on many things. So I started to listen to some of the sound bites that I had running in my head, especially once Scottie came out to me. And I realized there was a theme of blame and loss. So I'll just give you a few examples. Trust me, there are plenty more, but you could probably make them up yourselves. How could you do this to me? I married a man, not a woman. I'm losing my husband. I'm not a lesbian. And on and on.
Now, yes, this is a relationship, and Marcy's got sound bites in her head. For my entire life, I've had a soundtrack, and several of them, right? Well, now I'm starting to realize that these soundtracks have sheared the fabric of our relationship. Our universe has been torn. And, you know, I've got gender dysphoria going on already, but because I'm such the overachiever, I decided it's best to have a rift in my relationship too. So I, as the trans person, decided that I would believe that it was impossible for Marcy to understand what I was going through. Right? I realized I had been doing that. I just believed that. And then I started to predict her behavior based on that. All right? You want to try a really cool thing? Try to pretend that you can, for a moment, know what someone else is feeling if they don't tell you. It's a really fun exercise. Try it. But what I realized I was doing was that I was putting up a wall. And I put this wall in front of the walls that I'd already built in front of myself. And trust me, I built a castle, right? So I built this other wall now between us and our relationship. And what happened was Marcy sensed this wall, and instead of trying to get over the wall, she built her own wall. And then a moat filled up in between us, and then we both started throwing our own dragons in there and just watching the whole melee go off. The turning point was when we realized we were doing this. And then we realized that we didn't do anything else in our life separately. Why were we doing this separately? So we realized we needed to do it together. And the first thing we needed to do was we needed to explore our beliefs and our concepts. And that's when this hole in the space-time continuum started to sew back together. Mm-hmm. We worked together. We really tried to get down to what we believed about gender, sexuality, what is a man, what is a woman, what is transgender, what is a husband and wife. And surprise, surprise, it was embarrassingly binary. Mm-hmm. Now, I say embarrassingly because as a transgender woman, the whole idea of a binary gender out there made no sense. It didn't explain me, so I discarded it, I thought. But I had all these voices going on inside of me and all these other stories and all these other things that were stuck in there. It was as if my parents, the media, friends, teachers, coaches had all come with a box and left it in a room in my consciousness, and I hadn't even seen it when they left it. But now we had to get in there and figure out what these were. All right? So we invented a game called the binary game. So we're going to play it now. We're going to start off by showing you a few that we had heard, and then go ahead and we'll ask you to just shout them out. We'll repeat them for the people who are watching on TV. But let's take a look at like some of these things that are stuck in our consciousness. All right? My dad was super macho. He was always the dude who all the other families wanted to be around, not just men and women. They all loved him. They all wanted to be with him. So I was only son, oldest child, apple of dad's eye. When I cried, it was, if you're going to cry, Mary Jane, go put on a dress.
Cute. Well, my mother wanted to be sure that I would not drive a car or throw a ball like a girl. So already, that was a pretty big put down to being a girl, but a little confusing because it came from my mother. And it was even more confusing because she was the one who insisted on teaching me how to drive and throw a ball.
Now, I've known since I was 4 years old, never tell anybody that I was a girl. I've had, you can read in my book, it's a long and horrifying story. So I knew not to do that. But I went to my first boy-girl party, and one of the chaperones said, you know, that Scottie is all boy.
Little did they know.
Yeah. Then the other chaperone, later on, unbeknownst to that one being said that, said, I don't know, there's just something about that Scottie. Just in touch with his feminine side.
So at a young age, when I announced to my parents that I wanted to be a nurse, my mother said, you're going to love my mother by the end of this thing. She was really great, by the way. There were a few things. She told me that I should be a doctor instead because I wouldn't want to be carrying bedpans all my life.
So my father used to say, are you going to let a girl beat you? So now I'm wondering, I get it. He doesn't think that being a girl is good. I've got 3 sisters, by the way.
Yeah. By my late teens, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I was approaching college. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. So both of my parents strongly encouraged me to be a secretary so that I would have something to fall back on. It was interesting to me because none of my 3 brothers were ever told they should have something to fall back on.
So how about you guys? Do you have any things like that are bouncing around in your consciousness?
My name is Karthik. I come from a very traditional Indian family. Although some of my aunts and uncles live here, the mindset is still stuck back in 1950s in India. So a couple of things. I was helping my wife choose an Indian traditional wear sari, the drape. So she was confused between the two, and there was no one as tall as her to help her choose. So I just wore the drape and the sari, and then I helped her choose. And then some of the people took a look at the picture, and they were not happy about it.
Because you were in a sari.
Yeah, exactly.
Scottie can wrap her own saris now.
Yeah.
And
At Offlet, I colored my hair for the LGBT Pride, and a lot of people got confused. A lot of people.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because it's not what they expect.
Yeah.
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 Who else?
Thank you. Yes.
You know, my dad was really concerned with me being masculine, and any little sign of femininity that he detected in me at all, whether it was using a drinking straw. I can remember I was like 5, and he just really got onto me hard about that. Or I asked him, I had a headache. We were in the car one day, and, you know, I asked him, do you have any, you know, I was 5, okay, and it was like, I don't know, 1,000,000 degrees outside because it's Texas, and it was August, and I just had a bad headache, and so I said, do you have any, like, baby aspirin? I was little, and he was like, well, hell no, what are you, some kind of a sissy? And he handed me a couple of Bear aspirin. I said, well, do you have any water? And he's like, no. And
Real men don't use water to take aspirin.
Or take baby aspirin.
My dad was like that, though.
Wow.
Oh. Well, my father called a straw a sissy stick.
That's what my dad did, too. That's exactly what he used.
Ugh. Wow.
Poor
Who
girls.
else?
Any
Let's
other-
keep the love fest going.
Got a couple back here. Good.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm in marketing. Hey, my first job was in a movie theater, and I was an assistant manager, and I was the only female manager, and I was at a cash register behind the concession stand at the movie theater. And one of the kind of district managers kind of walked through mail and saw me, and he said, I'm surprised they let you handle money.
Oh. Mm-hmm. And there was one right behind you, right? Wow, Alex.
Hey everyone, Miles, software intern. So early in my internship, I heard a bunch of things that I didn't find them offensive, but it was kind of a story of if anyone cared, it would have been very offensive, except it was only talking to white males like me, so they thought it'd be fine. And I told my father that I was thinking of writing something about it, and he's a very nice person. I trust him on most decisions, and just this morning, after talking to him about it last night, I got an email. It was basically a massive warning saying, 1, nothing will change, 2, you'll mess up your own career, and 3, I'm going to reiterate points 1 and 2. So that was interesting to get this morning.
Yeah,
Wow, just
for sure. Wow.
Going back here on the aisle. Thank you, Judy, for spontaneous mic running.
So my spouse is an astrophysicist, and we were at Lawrence Berkeley Labs, and they have an open day one day every couple of years to get government funding. They have to open to the public. So we went on to one of the floors that was not necessarily in the open part, because there's a poster that my spouse wanted to look at, and it was something about laser diffraction of crystallography. I'm a developer relations guy. I'm a gamer. I'm like, oh, look, shiny. So the scientist comes out who wrote the paper, and my spouse asks a question, and the scientist turns to me because I'm very male presenting with the beard and starts giving me the answer. I'm like, wait, what? I didn't ask you a question.
Right. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Every car that we bought, now mind you, my father was a car salesman and a bartender. When we went in to buy a car, we were always going in because Marcy had done the research, and it had to please Marcy because I've had cars all my life. I don't care anymore. Every single time I would say, you're not selling me, you're selling her. Didn't matter. It was like a magnet.
He would look at me and then continue to talk to Scott.
He would smile, discredited, or what? Dismissively. That's the word I'm looking for. Who else?
Got one over here.
Yeah, so so my name's Maria. I manage a software team here. And in the same vein, just this weekend at a friend's wedding, we were talking with the significant other of someone my husband knew in high school, and this guy is like apparently super into Star Trek, and Star Wars was more my thing when I was little. But my husband and I, our son's middle name is Tiberius from Star Trek. But the funny thing was, like, this guy at the start of every conversation about something, he would like talk to my husband. And as the conversation progressed and I like inserted myself, he would like talk to me. But every time we started a new conversation, like over the weekend, he'd like come talk to my husband about this nerdy stuff. And like my husband would be like, actually, like we're both software nerds, but like stuff like that, like often people will talk to my husband about something and he'll have to be like, actually, she's the one who.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's in our DNA, unfortunately.
Not anymore.
One more? Oh, okay. One more back here?
Sorry. One of my first jobs when I was doing like a closing shift and I was being left alone and it was very easy. It was something I wasn't afraid to do, but literally I got the question like, will you be afraid to be by yourself? And I kind of looked and was like, why would I be afraid? And they're like, because you're a girl. Like,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Wow.
So when I was a kid, never liked to wear dresses, and they were introducing uniforms to my public school when I was in elementary school, and I begged my parents to take me to the intro night that they were having for the parents, and I kind of hid down, in the seats, and I noticed that they only had skirts displayed for the girls, and I told my dad from down below, I was like, ask her if the girls can wear pants. And so my dad asked the principal, do you have a pants option for the girls? And the principal said, no, we're preparing our ladies for the workforce. They don't wear pants. So.
How about we do one more? Do we have one?
And maybe just one on the phone.
Oh,
Okay.
ouch. I mean, not,
Wow.
I actually have 2 young children, a boy and a girl, and I feel like we're a very, open family, and I'm noticing how young it starts. When I bring out the nail polish for nail night, and my daughter tells my son, no, you can't paint your nails because boys don't paint their nails. So, we're working on it, but it's interesting how young it starts, even at school.
Yeah, like where would she? I mean, she had to.
I don't know where she was.
Yeah,
Right, that doesn't just come out of thin air, right? Yeah, wow. Oof.
So you want to continue and then towards the end we can open up the phone lines for other comments.
Oh,
sure.
okay, great.
Guess we had one more comment in the room. Nope.
I think he's a mic provider.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, well, wow. So
You see.
So you see, there's a connection, and the thing is that as we go into the workforce, even if we're not conscious of it, even if we're not conscious that we're taking it into our relationship, it can be there. It can be there until you shine a light on it. So we encourage you to continue this exercise. But hopefully we can agree that the only place that the binary should exist is in your world of computers.
We do want to take a minute here, though, to celebrate how far we've come. We were amazed when we did this exercise, even in a couple universities where everybody was like 20 and below. We were still hearing, we didn't think there'd be that many shares, and they were frightening. So we have come a long way, though, believe it or not. Because just a few decades ago, the story was very different. You may have heard of Lynn Conway. At IBM, Lynn is credited with inventing the computing systems ACS projects, multi-issue out-of-order dynamic instruction scheduling. And the Computer History Museum has stated that this appears to be, quote, the first superscalar design, a computer architectural paradigm widely exploited in modern high-performance microprocessors. Now, I have no flipping idea what that really means, but hopefully you guys do. And in 1968, IBM fired Lynn because she revealed that she wanted to transition.
Yeah, they fired the one woman who basically established how we use computers today. They fired her, right? She did go on to transition in 1968, went on to be a visiting professor at some little tiny school called MIT. Has anybody ever heard of this place? I hadn't, but I'm assuming it's important. and later was a member of DARPA. Space geeks in the world unite. We know what DARPA is. And also part of the Defense Department's Strategic Computing Initiative. And I mean, you know, her computer credits and what she did in her career as an engineer went on and on and on. She was also a very powerful activist in the trans world. She was one of the first to create what was called the Transgender Hall of Fame. Actually, it was called the Transsexual Hall of Fame. And it was on a website that she started way back in the day. And what it was a picture and a line of all of these trans men and trans women who had lived productive lives. And it was all across the board. When I first discovered this website, I was like, oh, you mean we're not a porn site? Because I'm not that young. When I first typed TRAN into my Google search 10 years ago, guess where I went? In places where you get charged for being on it every 5 minutes, and I couldn't get out, you know, and like all I'm trying to do is find out why I have these feelings. Yes. So she was said, Ken Shepard, who's a professor of electrical engineering and biomedical engineering at Columbia, said, quote, Lynn's amazing story of accomplishment and personal triumph in the face of personal adversity and overt discrimination should serve as an inspiration to all young engineers. So, being Lynn, she, with all of that turmoil and all of that strife, we're talking 60s, 70s, and 80s, not to mention how she got to the point in 1968 where she actually announced it that she wanted to transition. She still did this entire body of work. This is sort of how we work. Right? She's one woman who helped shape history, and she shaped history with her life, her spirit, and her work.
So you can see we have come a long way since that, I hope. And here we are at the transition in 2016. We had already gone through many phases as a couple as we dealt with Scottie's transition. We had to face the situation personally in our relationship, but as well as with work. We had to redefine, recommit in our love and our marriage. And by the way, statistics say that only 21% of couples stay together after someone has transitioned. So something seemed to be working for us. And as we examined our own experience of the transition, we could see that we were gaining valuable insights along the way. And as we did this examination and sharing with each other, that maybe some of this could be applied in the workplace. And plus, Scottie and I had the added benefit of having been managers as well. So we both served in management roles.
Yeah, the video that was playing when you guys walked in, those are highlights from it wasn't the last show I did, but it was the show that started it all. It was called Dude, You're Screwed.
Isn't the universe fun?
Now, okay, I'm guilty as charged. I made that show be as dudish, as uber-male, as frat boy, as boys will be boys as I possibly could. That was our secret sauce. That was our brand. The cast, all those guys you saw, those knuckleheads running around, they're all either former military or active military. The guy that gets thrown into the lake and finds the puppy, he's right now in Afghanistan. He's a 20-year veteran of the Green Berets. Now, hanging out with these guys meant that everybody else on my crew was trying to adopt their rules of engagement so that they can fit in. So this was total hoorah cast, right? But I created that, right? That's the space that I created. So, you know, the only place more macho than us was the NFL. And they only work on Sundays, right? This is the absolute perfect place to be run by a transgender woman, wouldn't you guess? Right?
And a great place to come out.
Yeah.
You started as Scott and ended up as Scottie.
Yep.
So, yeah, she had quite the waters to navigate for sure, but that also included not just the crew, but it meant the suits at the network and the production company executives and this whole huge crew that had to maneuver through some of the most dangerous places all across the world.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. One of the things that I'm most proud of is my reputation. And my reputation as a showrunner was that I had a really good relationship always with my crew. I had to. You know, we're with each other 24/7. We're getting in and out of a country, usually before they've known we're there, with 100 pieces of gear. We're going to some of their crown jewels of their natural resources, where we probably shouldn't be putting a TV camera, and we're getting in and out before we get in anybody's face and can be told no. We're usually freezing to death. We're hanging out of a helicopter. Every helicopter that was getting the shots of the helicopter, I'm in usually holding on to one camera operator while I'm directing the other thing. It's a place where respect is tantamount. We don't have a margin for error, so we can't have anybody second guessing, right? So I had this esprit de corps with my crew because I had come up through the ranks. When I got out of college, I was a camera operator, I ran audio, I ran teleprompter, I was a grip, I was a gaffer. Don't ever put me in charge of electrical, high voltage electricity, it's not a good thing. But I knew what it was like to be on a set where I thrived. So when I got to be in charge, that's what I did. I created a set where it was creative, there was communication. You've got to know. There's no chance for guessing, so you have to have a production meeting every morning. Is everybody clear on what we're doing? We're all going to be hanging out of a helicopter here pretty quickly, and the winds are at 34 knots. Okay?
And throwing somebody out of one.
And we're going to throw, you know, someone out of a perfectly good helicopter, as John Hudson would say. So, you know, we had to be clear. We had to communicate. We had to trust each other. We had to respect each other. Now, I didn't know that I was creating the perfect environment for me to come out in. I never dreamed when I took that job that I would actually be coming out. And I didn't think it was going to happen. But then it did. So here's the thing. As the captain of the ship, and having been a sailor on many ships where there was a captain, I knew that the crew needed to know that the captain had a firm hand on the tiller. Right? And I needed them to know that even though I was transitioning, that they could still depend on me the way that they had before. That I could still get my executive producer, who had been in not one, but back-to-back boating accidents on a border between Guyana and Venezuela.
By the way, that was another show.
Yeah, it wasn't on, dude. I had to find a helicopter in the middle of the night to airlift her into Venezuela and call the State Department and tell them that I was sending an American on a mission of mercy, on a Red Cross mission, into Hugo Chavez's Venezuela. So please put the military on notice. I want this woman back. Right? I needed them to know that I could do that even if I was wearing a skirt. Now,
yeah, you can see who wears the pants in the film.
They were amazing. Each one of them.
The dudes?
The dudes. Terry Shepard told me, if anybody gives you any grief, you let them know that your big brother is a Green Beret.
That's great. So in your business, you also know, obviously, the importance of good morale and a positive work environment. And just from this room, I have to say, it feels like you have a very positive work environment. So morale obviously was crucial to Scottie, because literally she was put in life and death situations.
Yeah, I didn't have time for an elephant in the room. I never had time, certainly, for an elephant in the helicopter, right? You know, I don't know if you saw that one tower there. There's an ice tower that was in the middle of a glacier, a geyser field in Iceland, in a place that no one had ever thought, or maybe been foolish enough to put a helicopter on. But that's what we did. We didn't, it was split-second timing, so we had to know what was going on. They had to know that I am a woman, and that doesn't matter here. What matters is we're doing the job. So the way that I did this was that I knew how to speak the language of every person on my crew. As a manager, I made it my business to know how everybody was. Whenever my crew was out on the route, every night when I got back at night, I would call their wives, call their husbands, call their boyfriends, call their girlfriends, and none of those are binary too, by the way, and let them know, your honey is okay tonight. I just talked to them by sat phone. They're all good, right? So I thought, well, I need to do this the same way that I was doing my family. So what I did was I had a simple rule. Who is going to be hurt if they hear the news about my decision to come out secondhand? If they were going to be hurt by hearing that message secondhand, they went into an inner circle. And I built a series of concentric circles that were how much I was in a relationship with that person on out. And then I spoke to them in the language that I knew that they would understand. Oddly enough, it came down to this. You don't hem and haw on the phone. Hello, Kelly. Hey, Scott. I have some news. Really? I'm a woman. Silence. Okay, I have 2 questions for you. Number 1, are you punking me? No? Okay, number 2, are you happy? And number 3, and this is the one that broke my heart. It was perfect. How's Marcy? That showed me that they knew how important this was, because this is how important we are.
It was also, it really made a difference for us in that I was included, so it wasn't always the Scottie show and everything about Scottie. So I was always really touched when people cared about me too. So I'm just looking at the clock, and I'm wondering whether, I want to be sure we have room for Q&A, so I'm wondering if how much time we have, Judy, or?
We scheduled this for an hour, but we have the room until 11:30 if you need it. But I'm sure if you're ready to move on to Q&A.
Let's finish up this last point, because we did promise that we would give them a little Transgender 101.
Right.
So
okay.
let's do that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So just to put a button on that point then, thank you, Judy, is what we also saw is that the idea was more of a challenge to people. And then when people would see Scottie, it would be like, oh, I get it. Oh, and you're still the person I know. And that's what had to happen to me. I came around to, I wasn't losing my husband. I still had my mate, my partner. It was still the person, the soul, the being I had originally fallen in love with. I just had to get past the concept again, and being mad that she could keep her lipstick on and I couldn't. There were definitely some shifts in perception. But really, ultimately, it was my same mate, and we'd been together for over 20 years. I certainly did not want to start all over again with someone else, although in some ways I was, but that just made it kind of fun. So.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Trans 101. And this, for me, it's easier to think about this of clearing up a few misconceptions, or as I say, misconceptions. So I want to start this off by saying that there are as many ways to be trans as there are trans people. Okay, we don't speak for ourselves or the community. I may say a couple things that you've heard other trans people say, and we do that to protect and kind of make the way easier for the next gal or boy. So that's where we'll generalize a little bit. But please know that especially if you know a trans person in your life, they're the authority on who they are, right? And if we say something contradictory, with them it's right, and with us it's right. Okay? Okay. So, to that end,
where are we?
We're right here. The subject of privacy.
Oh. Wait. I'm sorry. Thank you. Good, we did that. Okay. Scottie has a great saying. Surgery is not a status, and curiosity is not an excuse. So what
Not an excuse.
Not an excuse. So what that means is to ask somebody about whether or not they've had or plan to have surgery is actually reducing the whole idea of being transgender to the body. And the whole point is it's not about the body.
It can't be.
It's about one's identity. Also, whether or not one has had surgery or not, which is a very personal decision, is not an indicator of how trans you are. It's not like, okay, you've gone all the way, so now you're really a woman. And so whether or not you have gender confirmation surgery is really off limits to ask somebody about.
Yeah, the excuse is, well, I'm just curious. I'm like, really? You know, it takes you a few drinks and the promise that we might get dinner out of this for you to even ask. If you ain't, as Laverne Cox says, if you're not a healthcare worker or a potential date, you don't need to know. And so certainly you don't need to ask.
Yeah. And again, the body parts do not determine the gender.
And probably one that has been said a lot, but it's good to remind us, sex and gender are two different animals, right? As Jenny Boylan says, sex is who you want to go to bed with, and gender is who you go to bed as. Okay? Therefore, trans is about identity, gender. Okay? Sex is reserved for the bedroom. All right? This fundamental thing is why I believe that the current debate about bathroom laws is so offensive to a trans person. It's offensive to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But, you know, some people go, well, why are you having such a big deal of it? Why don't we just make gender-neutral bathrooms? No, you don't understand. In this debate, in order to get your point of view, not yours, their point of view across, you have made this about sex.
Well, also, I don't want to get into the bathroom thing too much. We may later in the Q&A, whatever. But the point to me is whoever is trying to perpetuate that hasn't thought things all the way through. If you think it all the way through, though Scottie may have been born with male parts, I really can't imagine that guys would want her in the men's room now.
And there's no way I'm going in there. You guys have terrible aim.
But it's just not, it doesn't think through the whole process of what that would really mean. And by the way, sir, you and your daughter will have to be checked because we can't make assumptions that you're not transgender either. I mean, so anyway, I'm going to stop there and breathe, and you can go into pronouns.
There you go. So we have pronouns versus con nouns, okay? So here's something, if you don't know, this is the best way. Which pronoun would you prefer I use to describe you? You can ask us. We're usually pretty good about that. It is a little sticky if we're not sure that everybody in the room knows that we're trans. And there are some trans people who want to remain in stealth, okay? But you can say, how would you like me to address you? And then, if you are trying, even though you make a mistake, we're okay. I can say that pretty much across the board. We can feel when you're not okay, all right? Because you'll say, if I correct you, you say, whatever, right? That means you're being pretty dismissive.
But if you're like one of my brothers and you say, oh, damn shit, I'm sorry, then, you know, they're trying to really get it right.
Right. We remember this is a process, and it's a process for everybody, and we're cool with that, right? There's still things that I'm discovering as I'm in my transition and on my journey, and there's still things that Marcy and I are discovering. So we're not going to hold anybody else to a higher standard, right? We want to make sure that everybody is at least just trying, and then we're cool.
So we'd really like to move on in case you have questions. I just want to share one thing that hopefully might be of some help to you as you go forward. It certainly was a help for me through this whole thing. And that's the point, that it's how you approach whatever's going on, not what. So Scottie's dad, the bartender, car salesman, had a great saying, and it actually became my banner, my masthead, my reminder whenever I was starting to question things. And that is, you can go strapped across the saddle or sitting up in it, but you're going riding, Jesse James.
That's where your choice is.
I decided to go up in the saddle.
Thank
It's
God.
painful to lie across it. So, without further ado, we would love to hear if you have any questions for us.
Well, I can say that I have a dear friend who was a lawyer, and she worked for the federal government in prosecuting mine disasters, for lack of a better word. And so I watched her go through her transition, and her transition was very formal. Okay, she started off with, because it was a law firm, she started off with the partners who had hired her, and she was just upfront. This is what I'm going to do. Right? Then she said, how should we do this? And because they were the partners of the firm, they were the ones who were the ones who were going to set policy. They hadn't ever dealt with this at the time. This was 10 years ago. So they sat down and they crafted how they were going to go forward together. And then they followed that. And Paige, P-A-G-E, on Friday left. And there was a big, huge meeting with all of the members of the employees of the firm, and the partners led it. And there was the therapist that had helped her with her gender dysphoria there to answer questions about Paige's life. And it was a completely open forum, and everybody felt comfortable talking about it because Paige wasn't there, right? And then on Monday, Paige, with an I, came to work. And so the playing field had been set that way. But it took the trans person saying, I'm ready to do this. So that's what I would say to any, and be, if someone kind of steps out a little bit, or someone gets, read or clocked or outed, and they weren't expecting it, please give them some space, okay? This has to be a process that they drive. But then once they do take that step, it's important to start with whomever you connect with. In your company here, Judy said policy questions can be said. You should go to your HR department and just start the process there. Okay, the good news is this is 2016. So there's policies in place. There's protocols in place. People already know how to do this. But if you do it from the get-go and you don't do it like with one arm still in the closet and one foot stepping back, then everybody will be up front, and then you can get on with your life. So I'd say that first and foremost, make sure that it's time to do it, and then talk directly to your HR person.
And this is really why we talked so much about inclusion and communication in the beginning. And it goes both ways. People should be allowed to ask their questions. And we've had a few conversations about how to answer the questions. It's easy to be fiery and defensive if you're trans and you get upset because someone doesn't pay attention to or does ask about surgery. So I think another key thing is patience on both parts. Be patient with the trans person, but also the trans person needs to be patient with other people, because really a lot of times the questions do come out of curiosity, or they think they're okay to ask. And so gentleness and patience, but being inclusive. We learned a hard lesson when one dear friend said, "Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me?"
Marcy said it to me also. She said to me, you've had, at the time, 45 years to get to this point. I just got the news. Let me breathe. Right? Yeah. Next question? That's a great question. And I do talk about this in my book. It takes me a whole chapter to explain this. Here's one place where I did stay with the binary, right? For me, just for me. I was done with boy. Did not want it.
Always knew you were a girl.
Always knew I was a girl, but I was done with it. And when I was time to get rid of my clothes, it was like, out of the house, right?
My brothers are wearing them now.
They look way better in them. But because I told Mars, I just want to be a woman. And the idea that, especially once you wrote a book, right? Trans woman is now my label. And I don't necessarily like the trans part. But what I have found is that we can talk about that later. Right now, there's other things to do, more stuff to do in our community. And so if I can say trans woman and we can get going on what we were talking or get back to what we were talking about, then I'm in. That, I would say, that's the company line on that. I would say the philosophical part of your question is something that's going to be different for every person inside the community to know for themselves.
Yeah, remember it's a spectrum.
Yeah.
So Scottie's very clearly, I've always been a woman, and I'm still into women. But there are people who are on the VU meter of being in the middle. They want to be called they. They don't want to identify as anything. I was the one who brought up the problem with the word trans, because it sounds like you're not ever going to get there. Right? So being a Latin person, that kind of bothered me, and we've talked about reconciliation or reconciling who you really are. But it was a good question, actually. And did it answer it?
I think so. Yeah, it's different for every person.
Exactly.
I just dislike labels.
Yeah.
Me too.
Why don't you can give the mic to Paula.
Hey, yeah, I'm Paula, and so actually more of a comment than a question. The good thing about your question is that it actually there is a philosophical divide really in the trans community. Although I identify as a woman and always have, I like being a trans woman. I'm proud of being transgender. I love the fact that our bodies are different. I look at when a group of us went into a city council meeting locally that was about to do something horrible, and all of these different shapes and sizes and varieties of people that were trans, and it was one of the proudest moments in my life. It was like being a freaking X-Man. It was like being something...
Literally!
Being something different, though, than other people. And I know, but many of us feel exactly as Scottie said, and want, really, if we could just define ourselves and just say, I'm a girl, and that's it. That's all you need to know. Others of us, though, feel differently about it, and it really is a very individual thing, and neither one, to my mind, is wrong. They're both is a personal thing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paula. That's absolutely true. And just talking back to the X-Men part, like if you look at anybody right now who's out in the media who identifies as trans, and RT is one of the largest tents in the camp, because we have gender nonconforming and gender nonspecific, and we've got all these other derivations that are in there, because the spectrum is a spectrum, right? They're not hard clicks. So they are all in this wonderful.
Like one person can even move.
Yeah, one person says I'm this today and that tomorrow, and that's the thing, is it's for them, right? So it's whatever they want.
I'm just.
I would say to remember also that was a process and a spectrum, because it wasn't pretty at the beginning. Yeah, it's like whoa. Yeah. I was freaked out at first. I'd been married to this person for 20 some odd years. I think I was, you know what the key was for me? When I finally got in touch with, and it surprised me, that after I got past I don't have a husband anymore, and how can you do this to me, and how could you manage to keep this from me? And I realized that my most important thing in my relationship, and I'd had a couple before that didn't work, and it was mostly because it lacked honesty. I had finally found the perfect husband, and now we know why. But it was the lack of honesty. And in a way that really shocked me. So once, though, Scottie could talk to me, and once I could start breathing again, and we really had the hard conversations, it's not like I didn't have a moment where I'm going, well, I'm out of here, forget it. But where would I go? I had finally landed the best relationship I'd ever had. We'd invested 20 years in it. And, I, I was finally landed the best relationship I'd ever had. We'd invested 20 years in it. And, I, I was finally landed the best relationship I'd ever had. We'd invested 20 years in it. And, 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 Also, I got in touch with, here's the blame part. When I also realized there's no such thing as this is your fault. This is your karma, it's not mine. If you're in something, it is your karma. You might not like it, but I couldn't go like this. I had to go, okay, wait, I'm here. And I'm here for a reason. I can go strapped across the saddle, and I decided to make it, okay, this is, what if I treat it as an adventure, a whole new life? And when I realized, I'll try not to cry, but really, I get so mad when people say trans people are selfish, because this person had pretended to be a man for years, mostly for me, because she didn't want to freak me out or scare me or hurt me. So the least I could do after all those years that she invested in giving to me was to give her the space to be happy and live the life she wanted to live.
Okay, we probably have, anybody else have a question in the room?
One last, I mean, only an idiot would try to follow what she said, but...
But that's never stopped you before.
That never stopped me before. But one tool that we used in that arena is once we started to kind of dig in a little bit deeper is that I would say to her, you know, are we doing this right now? Isn't this supposed to be joyous? Isn't me being who I am supposed to be joyful? So if it's not joyful right now, let's turn this around. Right now, turn this energy about what we're fighting about. And then we were able to breathe and go, oh yeah, because she is the most beautiful, most intelligent, funniest, incredible person who's ever walked the planet. So why am I pissing her off? Right? So what am I doing? Oh, yeah, I'm not listening right now. Okay, so let's fix that. So that was that tool. That was the Occam's razor that we kept taking back into every conversation was, is this joyful? Because that's what it is.
What that was.
Well, before I answer, Marcy said something really amazing the other day, so I'll let her do that. But when she said that, you know, what I finally got her to understand is that I've been living my entire life as a woman. You just didn't know it, right? So you want to say what you were saying, how you came?
I don't remember.
Well, that was. I mean, I guess I stole your thunder. That's what it was.
I say so many wonderful things.
That's true. It's hard to keep track. Well, she said, you know, because what she realized, though, is though that's been true for me. And I mean, that's how I was able to run these crews.
Oh, yeah.
All of my role models in adventure television are women. There's three, they're known in the adventure business as the Amazons because they're all over 6 feet tall. These women are amazing. And Monica, who's the one that I told you about that got in the boating accidents, I run my shows exactly like we had built shows together. And she was the leader at that time. And so I did things the way that she did. And I was like, you know what, this works. As a woman, this works. First of all, it hits all of my sensibilities, number one, and I can see how it's going to tweak the boys a little bit. But you know what? It tweaks them in a good way. So let's do that, you know. But
the people around Scottie didn't know that she was a woman. So that was still the shock, still the factor, and factored into career.
Yeah, well, so now, anybody new, I've stepped into this world that has a glass ceiling starting to come down on my head, right? Because they look at my resume and they go, I thought this guy was coming in today. I'm like, yes, here I am. I got my hair cut. So I face that a little bit. I will say that one thing that I do have, I'll confess to having, this must be left over from being raised by wolves, that's the way I call it, is that when someone starts to do that, or I can smell that they're starting to regard me as the weaker or the lesser or the any of that stuff, you have pissed me off. And I'll check you into the boards like you've never seen, and that's not ladylike. And then we've got a problem because now I'm crying because I'm mad at myself, right? I'm not fighting into cliches, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to fall back on the arrows that I have in my quiver that I learned how to use, because those aren't good ones to use. They didn't work then, they're not going to work now, they're just going to make me feel better for the next 30 seconds, right? So I'm still learning some of that. I am experiencing it. The one thing I will say to kind of cap this out is we had this question at one of our book signings, and it was a woman who I'd worked with her husband for 20 years. And she said, well, you know, now that you're on this side of the fence, do you have a better idea about what we've been going through this whole time? And I said, let me stop you there. I knew we were going through this entire time. Okay? I'll confess, there are times that I got a little bit of privilege out of that because everybody thought I was a boy. Didn't stop me from A, trying to stop it when I saw it, B, feeling hurt when it did happen, C, banging my head against that wall believing that there's no way it should happen, and that I didn't want my sisters or any other person below me to have to fight the same thing. That's why I fight so hard. That's why I run my shows the way I do. So, it's a long, long answer to your question. That's very deep, and it's going to be an ongoing process. Go, Hillary.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it. I think we need to probably let the room go, but we have the space for, once again, she has her book available for you. If you'd like to purchase it, she'll sign it for you. And I just want to say thank you very much for coming, and let's give them both a hand. Thank you very much.